want to thank you all for being here so much. This is, we're really glad to partner with Sharon for at least the second time. It's probably been more than that. And those of you who attended here last year know that you're in for a really great hour. And those who were not here, you are this is gonna be really well spent. I just want to say that please participate. If you enjoy what you're seeing here on the floor, you can literally hug a pony down on the exhibit floor and have barbecue. And did you know that the Henry Mural guy has a tour now to go to see all the Henry murals? So there's a tour bus down there that you can check out. PCMA has a program coming up May 9th in Vancouver, Washington. Please join us. That's a self-care event. It's going to be at the brand new AC Marriott in Vancouver, Washington, not BC. Don't want you to show up at the wrong place. I think Alicia said that this was just in case. Turn off your cell phones, put them on vibrate. It can be distracting if that happens. Kat Uzel's in the house. We're glad to see that. And without further ado, I will very excitedly introduce Sharon, who has been leading and transforming teams for over 25 years. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Sharon Andrade.
Thank you, Brock. I appreciate that. And I appreciate all of you for being here. Teamwork makes the dream work. Oops, I got to be careful with this thing. You guys know that, right? None of us is as smart as all of us. Ken Blanchard. There's no I in team. Right. Why do we know that? Because we've been part of teams. You were part of a soccer team. You were part of a tennis team. You were part of a baseball team. You were part of a chess team. And I need to not talk with my hands so much. So we've all been part of teams growing up, right? And then what happens? We go into the workforce, and guess what? We're part of more teams. We have ad hoc meeting planning teams. We have ad hoc project teams. We have our department teams. We have our executive leadership teams. And guess what? Organizations even call you a team member instead of employees. My question is, are you really a member of a team? Are you really a team member, or are you a member of a work group? And what I would propose is that a lot of the teams that we see out there today are work groups and not true teams. That's what we want to talk about today, is how leaders and how team members can work together to create powerful and high-performing teams. Because it's not finance, it's not strategy, it's not technology. As much as we hear about AI, it's teamwork that is the ultimate competitive advantage. Why? Because it's so powerful and so rare. So that's based upon a quote from Patrick Lencioni, who is the authors of 5 Behaviors of a Team. Who's seen the movie Boys in a Boat? I read the book 10 years ago, and I watched the movie last year. Wow, what a story of teamwork, right? So what happens for those who haven't seen it? 1936, a group of 8 men, young men, at the University of Washington make it to the 1936 Olympics in Berlin. This is Nazi Germany, Berlin, by the way. So how did it happen? Not easily. One of the characters, Joe Rance, he grew up in the rough side of town, a little bit difficult upbringing. He had some trauma, some devastation in his young life. And then another member of the team is Bobby Mock. Bobby lived the perfect life, had everything, always got the girl. And guess what? Bobby and Joe butted heads when they got on the team. Why? Because they had different backgrounds and different experiences. And because Bobby always got the girl that Joe wanted. Joe also had conflict with a coach, Coach Al Ulbrichtson. But guess what? Over time, it took time for them to build trust and unity. So they're in the final race in the 1936 Olympics. In the beginning, guess what? They fall behind. They're exhausted. They've been through a lot just to get there. 1936, getting to Germany wasn't that easy. So they're digging deep, pulling every ounce of energy they have within them in order to keep the boat moving forward. They have to have perfect synchronicity. What does that take? It takes not only paying attention to yourself, but to your team, and knowing that you need to support them as well as yourself. So guess what? Digging deep down, they fell into perfect synchronous strokes, and they won. Because why? It wouldn't be a book or a movie if they didn't win. And because they used trust and unity to get across the finish line. We're going to talk about a couple of things today. One is the 5 behaviors of a cohesive team. The essential 5 behaviors, again, is based upon a book by Patrick Lencioni, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Who's ever heard of that book or read that book? It's a great book that you find in a lot of workplaces today. It's sold over 3 million copies because it's the foundation of teamwork. And he also has a lot of research behind it. Then we're going to talk about 2 fundamental skills that every team member and every leader needs to have in order to be on a high-performing team. So what is the definition of leadership? Leadership is the ability to inspire and guide a team toward a common goal. Inspire comes from the word inspiro, which literally means to breathe life into. Think about you as a leader. Think about your leaders. Do you breathe life into your team, or do you suck it right out of your team? Some leaders don't breathe life in, they suck it out. Oh, man. So, inspire and guide toward a common goal. Common goal is going to be a big theme throughout this presentation because it's so important. A leader is someone that you would follow to a place that you would not go by yourself. What about this place? It's Montana, out in the middle of nowhere. I love it. I'd go there maybe by myself. Well, maybe with somebody else because there's bears and such. But leaders are responsible for taking you to a place you would not go by yourself. Somebody that you willingly follow, and they're able to get your discretionary effort. What is discretionary effort? Does anybody carry cash, a wallet full of cash? Probably not that many people anymore, but when we did, we would decide how much money we're going to pull out of our wallet and put it on the table. That's what we do every day at work. If we're fully engaged, we're going to take everything we have in that wallet and we're going to put it on the table, and we're all in. If we have great team members and great leaders to work with, and guess what happens if we don't? We keep. I'm just going to keep. Quietly quitting, have we heard of that? I'm going to keep some of that effort. I don't believe that this team is on the right track. I don't believe this leader deserves all of my effort today. Discretionary effort. So when we get to a high-performing team, why do we want it? Because we make better, faster decisions. We leverage the talents and skills of all of the team members. It's called collective intelligence, right? So none of us is as smart as all of us. In fact, the average team is only as intelligent as its smartest member. So what happens is that they don't rise above unless they collect that intelligence and work together. So great teams don't waste time on politics and all of that. They create a competitive advantage, and most importantly, have fun. Who's been part of a team where you have fun at work? Not just because you go to parties, but because you actually have fun at work, in your meetings, whatever it is. So the 5 behaviors model, which again, Patrick Lencioni, is based on trust, conflict, commitment, accountability, and results. And the foundation is trust. Do you trust the person next to you? Do you? Maybe you don't know them. So imagine a foundation, right? So the foundation of our homes. What happens if the foundation gets a water leak? It crumbles. What happens if you're building a deck and one of your posts isn't as strong as the others? And you have a party and everybody's on your deck? Everybody falls down. It could be a disaster. So we have to make sure we have the right foundation, which is trust. And we're talking about vulnerability-based trust. I don't know why that keeps happening. So it's not predictive trust. Predictive trust means that I work with you, you work with me over a period of time, we kind of figure out how each other work, and I trust you. Yeah, I trust you. But vulnerability-based trust means that we establish psychological safety where I can be 100% myself at work. I don't have to worry. I don't have to worry about saying the right thing. I don't have to worry about any retributions if I make the wrong decision. There are only safe spaces. There are no safe spaces, only safe people. So David Burkus is another great writer about teamwork and research around teamwork. So think about that. Safe spaces, safe people. Think about your team meetings. Can you say anything you want in your team meetings? So yes, if you have great teams, yes you do. So teams with trust, with vulnerability trust, they admit their weaknesses, they assume positive intent, they focus on issues and not politics, and they offer and accept apologies easily, right? It's about, hey, I made a mistake. What do you need to build trust? Think about that. What do you need to build trust? Some of us need to get to know one another, to go out and have cocktails together and go have coffee together because we need to establish a personal connection in order to build that trust. Others, guess what? They don't need that to build trust. What they need is, you did what you said you were going to do, and so I am learning to trust you because you are a person of your word. What holds you back from trusting people? Sometimes you don't want to be a burden, or from vulnerability-based trust. You don't want to be a burden. You don't want to ask someone to do something because you feel like their plate's already too full. You don't want to ask them for help because you feel like their plate's already too full. Your fear of disapproval. Oh, well, nobody's going to like that idea. I better not bring it up. Fear of a loss of control. So one of my friends right now has a new leader that he's working with. He's a rock star sales guy, and this new leader comes in and takes over calls all the time, just comes in and takes over the call. Why? That new leader has a fear of loss of control and not trusting his team members. So he thinks he's doing the guy a favor by coming in and taking over. But who wants that? So a fear of a loss of control and not wanting to appear incompetent, right? We all want to feel important and competent. So what holds you back? When you think about trust in your team or your organization, and even if you're working with a short-term like ad hoc team to plan a meeting, what holds you back from being 100% yourself? I have a question for you that I'm actually going to read. While using one of your team's primary software platforms, you accidentally delete a large block of data. Working on your own, you manage to restore the information and you're about 90% confident that there will be no adverse effects from the issue. What do? Right? Large block of data, oh, got it fixed, okay. Do you keep the issue to yourself? Do you wait to see if any teammates had issues and then bring it up? Or do you proactively notify your teammates of the situation? I want you to turn to the person next to you or near you and tell them which answer you would choose and why. Take 30 seconds to do that. Okay. How many chose A? Keep the issue to yourself. There's no right or wrong answer here. Who chose number B? Wait to see if there were any implications and then bring it up. Okay, yeah. And who would choose C? Proactively notify your teammates. Wow, you guys are awesome teammates that like to build trust because that is the best answer. Sometimes we don't always take the time to do it. I've heard this many times. Oh, I'll get with that person and make sure they know. And then I go to that person, did they tell you? No, I'm not sure what you're talking about. So we have the best of intentions, but so how do we build trust? Is it sitting around in a circle and holding hands and singing Kumbaya? Maybe for some, but that's not how we build real vulnerability-based trust. How do we do it? We admit weaknesses, especially if you're a leader of a team. If you made a mistake, even if there's no repercussions, hey, guess what I did today that was really kind of dumb? You ask for feedback. It might look something like this. Hey, So tell me what's working really well for you on this team, and tell me what I could do that's different. So many times we look for that positive feedback, but we have to understand what our team is looking for in order to, and asking for that feedback helps build that trust. We got to celebrate the failures. Do we celebrate failure? Heck no, but we need to. When I say celebrate, that means that we acknowledge them. Thank you for trying. That was a good risk you took. Didn't work out, but here's what we learned, and we move forward. And trust begets trust. So when I was about 20s, early 30s, I remember having a conversation with my parents. I said, wow, you guys really trusted us when we were younger, huh? We kind of had like a generous curfew and had a lot of, you gave us a lot of leeway. And my dad looked at me and he's like, we did not trust you. No, we did not trust you. We wanted you to think we trusted you because we believed that you would make better decisions that way. So think about that with your teams. When you're trying to let go of that thing that you really want to hold on to, and if you let it go and you trust someone else to handle it, what do you get back? You get back trust. Trust begets trust. So trust, the foundation. Can't do without it. Got to be strong. The next layer is conflict. Who loves conflict? Some people do. Most people don't. Conflict happens at work. It's a necessary. And why is it important? Because when there is trust, conflict becomes nothing but the pursuit of truth, an attempt to find the best possible answer. If you feel safe that you can bring up any idea and that there's no wrong answer, then guess what? You might bring up an idea and somebody could say, I'm not sure about that. Can we talk about it more? So teams that master productive conflict, they make better decisions, they make faster decisions, they minimize politics, and they put the elephant in the room and address it. They don't skirt around the issue. So look at this. So conflict continua. On one side, we have artificial harmony. On the other side, we have mean-spirited debate. Where would you like to be on this continua? Anybody want to be on the artificial harmony side? Based on research, that's where the majority of teams are. So based upon the research by Patrick Lencioni and all of the data that they've collected from 5 behaviors assessments and research around the world, most teams live with artificial harmony. And because what happens? If they move toward mean-spirited debate, I don't want to do that. That's not going in the right direction. So there's somewhere in between. When you have artificial harmony, what happens? Oh, and I see this all the time. Oh, we have a great team. Oh, I love working with our team. And then what happens? There's a side conversation. And this team member is talking about how that team member didn't do a very good job, or that team member didn't follow up and do what they said they were supposed to do. So it's not mean-spirited debate, but it's passive. Then you have mean-spirited debate. Is that good? No, because it ends up being personal attacks. So what we want to do is we want to be somewhere in the middle on this continuum. We don't want to maintain artificial harmony. We want to make sure that we ask the tough questions and that we embrace conflict. So how do we do that? We focus on ideas and not people. Sometimes there might be that person in the room who always has something to say, right? And you're thinking, do I have to listen to their idea again? Well, just listen to their idea and don't pay attention to them. Be open and ask questions. Speak up. You have to speak up even if it means that you're disagreeing. And you need to look for the quiet person in the room and ask them a question. Ask for their idea because you're not going to get it unless you ask. So conflict is the second layer. So we have trust, conflict, and now we get to the commitment. This is where teams have the largest failures. Every team that I've come into or that I've worked with over the last couple of years as a consultant, I won't say every team, but most are not clear on what they're committed to. So achieving commitment only happens if you have good productive conflict. I've got to make sure I can ask the right questions. I've got to make sure that I understand the why, and I want to make sure that I've had the opportunity to voice my opinion and hear yours. So achieving commitment means that we're clear on the priorities and direction. Everybody knows where we're going. I know what your responsibility is, and you know what my responsibility is to the greater good, to the good of the team. There's no question. We learn from our mistakes, and we take action on opportunities. So how do we achieve commitment? There's two parts. Clarity. Go clean your room. Has anybody said that to their child? Go clean your room. What happens? Go clean your room, Joe. So Joe goes to clean his room, comes out 10 minutes later, it's clean. Oh, really? Wow, that was fast. Let me go see. You go into Joe's room, guess what? Where are the clothes? Well, of course, they're under the bed, right? What's in the closet? Everything else got stuffed into the closet. Why? Well, that's clean to Joe. His bed was made, the mattress or the cover was pulled up, there's a bunch of stuff piled under it. That's clean to Joe. And you're like, Joe, that's not clean. So how could you give Joe more clear instructions, more clarity on what he's committing to by cleaning his room? Joe has to buy in too. So the first part is I'm very clear about what my responsibility is and your responsibility, and I have bought in. This is another thing. We send commitments via email. Here's what you're going to do today. Do we ask for a response? Sometimes. We don't get the buy-in if we don't ask for the response, if we don't have the opportunity to ask questions. So achieving commitment requires both clarity and buy-in. And why don't we get clarity? Has someone had trouble getting clarity maybe in their organization or on their team? So what stops you from getting clarity? You can just shout out. Unclear expectations, right. So what's not clear about it? Like the measurement, how it's going to happen, who's going to do it, all those things, right? We're going to talk about that in a little bit. Anyone else? Conflicting feedback. So wait, I thought we were doing this. Oh no, we're going over here now. Sometimes that can be okay, as long as the team has bought into what the commitment is. So the other part is buy-in. Well, you come out of the meeting, I didn't get to ask the right questions. 3 of my teammates weren't there because they were on vacation, but we're moving forward without them anyway. What? I don't agree with that. I'm not gonna buy into that. So that's what prevents us from getting buy-in, is doubts and clarity, because we haven't asked the questions to get to the point of clarity. Because sometimes this meeting is long enough, I can't wait to get out of here. I don't want to ask any more questions. It's just going to prolong the meeting. So how do we achieve commitment? We have to slow down and we have to ask questions. If it's not clear, make sure that it's clear to you and everyone in the room, especially if you're the leader. Is it clear? Do you know what you're committing to? And it's not just a question. So tell me, what are we committing to? You're asking them to verbalize it back to you, because if you're just telling them what they're committing to, you're not getting the buy-in, right? So what are we committing to here? And once the team has made a decision, don't hold on to your idea that didn't get selected. You gotta let it go. You gotta go with what the team has decided. And commitment is not consensus. Consensus is not team decision-making. It's about getting the best ideas through that conflict process, and then committing and moving forward. And then what happens? Okay, we're committed, we know where we're going, and now we need accountability. And the thing about accountability is if you have commitment, it gives team members the courage to hold one another accountable, knowing that they're asking their peers to do something that they have fully agreed to. So again, I'm gonna go back to that example of my good friend who's on a team selling, and there's a weak link on the team. And he keeps saying, well, I wish my boss would do something about this weak link over here. Why can't you do something? The best teams have peer-to-peer accountability. You can't be accountable for something that you don't know about. And again, I hear, having spent years in hotels, we've got to hold people accountable. Well, what are you holding them accountable to? Do they know what that is? So making sure that they have buy-in to those goals, buy-in to those processes, then it becomes easy. And guess what? When you have accountability, you eliminate poor performance through peers. Michael Jordan, he's not going to let anybody on the bus that wasn't fully committed to the team. Was he the manager of the team? Nope. He was the best player. And he wanted everybody to be as committed as he was. Identify potential problems without hesitation. And avoid excessive bureaucracy. So when you are asking for accountability from your peers, you are doing your team a favor and yourself a favor, because you're eliminating that poor performer, that person who is not pulling their weight. So how do you embrace accountability? Is it the leader holding the team accountable? Sometimes the leader needs to be involved in accountability. However, it's peer-to-peer accountability that's going to move the needle. We have got to ask each other for accountability once we know what we're committed to. And if we don't know, we got to get that clarity before we can do that. So how do we embrace accountability? Are you open to feedback? Are you open to feedback? Do people know you're open to feedback? Openly accept that feedback from teammates. Make sure that you follow through on your commitments. And keep your team informed of changes or inability to meet commitments. I had a recent experience where they said, oh yeah, we're gonna have a meeting next week. And I'm kind of like, okay. And then it was next week and we didn't have the meeting. How often does this happen with your clients maybe? Where you have an expectation, but they didn't meet the expectation and they didn't tell you that it changed. They didn't tell you that that contract signing date had changed. So that's accountability. And so if we have trust, conflict, commitment, accountability, then guess what? Results become real easy. We don't have to worry about costly and difficult situations because we've taken the time to go through the process, have those conversations, get commitment, ask for accountability, and then we're focused on the team results. Teams that focus on results retain high performers. They minimize individualistic behavior, right? So a lot of times you see team members that are adding ideas for the good of themselves. And that's fine, as long as they're also addressing the good of the team. Go back to Boys in the Boat. They had to pull from within each of them, but they knew that they also had to support the person next to them to get where they needed to go. So, and your results have to be beyond financial measures. It's not just the bottom line. What else is it? What else do we measure? Do we measure number of attendees? Do we measure number of exhibitors? Do we measure the speaker satisfaction? Do we measure, there's so many other milestones and measurements that we can have around results that are not necessarily financial. And I like this quote by Michael Jordan, which is, there's no I in team, but there is in win, right? So what that means is that each individual on the team has to contribute at 100% or more of that discretionary effort in order for the team to win. So that's the 5 behaviors model. We got to trust one another, engage in conflict around ideas, not people, commit to decisions, hold one another accountable, and focus on achieving collective results. So there are 2 skills that I want to equip you with. The first skill is setting clear expectations. If we can do this, then asking for accountability becomes real easy, just like Joe cleaning his room. So, because people can't live up to expectations that they don't know have been set for them. So think about the budgeting process. Some of us don't get a say in the budgeting process, do we? But if we did, would we be more bought into it? Probably. If we had the opportunity to at least provide feedback, even if that feedback wasn't taken into the decision process, even if we got to say our piece. So how do we set clear expectations? It's understood. Who, where, what, when, how. We clarify the difference between the current state and the desired state. Where are we today, and where do we want to be? It's behaviorally specific. It's achievable. Sometimes we're assigned expectations that we don't have the capability of achieving because we don't have access to the right system, or we don't have the right set of knowledge and skills in order to be able to live up to the expectation. And it has to be within my control, or my control through my sphere of influence. It can't be out of my control, or how are you going to give me that expectation? And it's verified. This is the most important part, meaning that they have committed to meeting the expectation. So they understand fully. So understands means what? There's clarity. And the committing to it means there's buy-in. So we're going to practice this. Who's ready to practice setting some clear expectations? I know you all are, because ready or not, here it comes. So these are some various topics around team communication, contracts, logistics, speakers, registration, exhibitors. Let's pick a couple topics. Who has some expectations that they believe need to be set more clearly around one of these topics? Go ahead.
I think for team communication, I feel like I have a lot of different teams that I'm a part of, but I noticed that the teams that work really well and effectively are always communicating with each other and feel open and can be vulnerable with each other as well.
Yes. So what is your name? Aaliyah. So what Aaliyah said is that she's a part of a lot of different teams, and what she said basically validated everything we talked about, is that those that have the most open and productive communication are those teams where you can be 100% honest, right? And be yourself. So what I want you to do, again, with the person sitting next to you, is to pick one of these topics, and I want you to practice setting clear expectation about one of these topics. Okay? And this is how it will work. I've got an example for you. So the milestones need to be updated in our project plan weekly by the end of day Friday every week. So the expectation is specific. Enter the updates and mark complete or ask for an extension. We're going to do this weekly until May 31st, which is 2 weeks before the event. You have to consider, is it realistic? Do they have access to the system? Do they understand the milestones? And are they verified? Okay? So I want you to take one of those topics. Do you want me to go back to the topic page? Or you guys all have something you could use to practice clear expectations. Okay, I want you to take about 3 minutes, and I want you to practice giving a clear expectation. I know this is out of your comfort zone, but you know what? Learning never happens within our comfort zone. So you might think you already know how to do this. I want you to just try it, and if you can do it so easily, then boom, you'll be done in a second. So let's go ahead and take about 3 minutes and practice this skill. Okay, how's that working for you? Who nailed it? Somebody just totally nail it? Okay, so the takeaway here is in the 5 dysfunctions, we need commitment. In order to get commitment, that clarity. So it's kind of commitment and expectations go hand in hand. So really understanding whether it's an ad hoc project team or for a meeting, whether it's your department, whether it's your entire team, making sure that expectations are clear. Because guess what? We have to make sure that people are willing and able to handle the expectation. Willing means they have the desire, and able means they have the ability. And so what questions are you asking? What are the indicators that someone has a genuine desire? Do you see the genuine desire, or are you just throwing it on them? Have they recently and successfully proven they can meet the expectation? Sometimes we give people expectations, and again, I'm seeing this a lot post-pandemic, we don't have time to train. We just need to have them go do. So guess what? I figured it out. You can figure it out too. How's that for an expectation? It happens, right? So they need to have demonstrated ability, and what we usually do is we rely on their capable ability. We know that they're probably capable of doing it, but they haven't demonstrated that ability. So we want to make sure that there's willingness and ableness in order to meet those expectations. So then when we finally have a great expectation that's clear, bought in, the accountability is the glue that holds the commitment to the results. Why are we creating expectations? Because we have results that we want to get to as a team, as an organization. And so asking for accountability is the glue. So that person didn't meet your expectation. Time to have the conversation. So what do? You start with I. This is a 4-step process. If you can master this process, you can ask for accountability from anyone. I just had a conversation with the director of sales at a hotel who I've been doing some work with. And she said, well, it's not my place to ask that question. Of course it's your place to ask that question. If you have a shared set of expectations, A construction deadline wasn't met, and they had to relocate a bunch of groups. Who's going to ask the contractor for accountability? Somebody has to. So you start with I. You state a feeling you have. Then you briefly explain what's happening versus what was expected. And you don't use the word you because that puts people on the defensive. And then you just ask a question, ask for clarification. So going back to the milestone thing, one of my team members didn't put any milestones in on the project plan. Remember that we set the expectation for weekly by Friday. So I need to have an accountability conversation. So what do? I say, Brock, I'm sorry to pick on you.
I'm right here.
I'm frustrated. We talked about all teams entering their project milestones in the system every Friday. It's been 3 weeks, and I haven't seen anything from the logistics team in the project plan. Help me understand. See how, did you feel defensive?
Not really.
So Brock might have a really good reason for not doing that. If we're like, you didn't put, and everybody else did, and you got to do it by next week, or oh man, there's going to be hell to pay. So that's not asking for accountability. That's using power to make somebody feel bad and do work because they feel bad. Asking for accountability leaves dignity intact. It's a way out with dignity. So think about that expectation that you just set. Think about back at your workplace, back with your teams, whether you're a leader or not a leader. Officially, you're all leaders. To be a good team member, having those skills of setting clear expectations and asking for accountability is really powerful. So think of a real conversation that you could have with a team member that hasn't met an expectation recently. Or maybe it's your child. Maybe it's your spouse. It works everywhere, you know. And it works much better than, you didn't bring me flowers and it's Valentine's Day. So, in summary, we covered the essential 5 behaviors. We talked about 2 foundational skills. Now, the coolest thing about the 5 behaviors of a team is actually there is an assessment. So if you have an intact team that you want to understand where you are on these 5 behaviors of trust, conflict, commitment, accountability, and results, this is actually a sample report. So everybody collectively answers a set of questions that explains where the team is on each of these behaviors. And then in addition to that, there's a DISC profile that also for each team member. So each team member gets a personalized report that tells them their conflict behavior, how they can build trust, what motivates them to get results, where their blind spots are and accountability. So it's kind of cool. So again, it's 5 behaviors of a team. And so my question for you, and if you're interested in that, send me a note. I'll be happy to share more information and how it works, but it's super powerful. Oopsie. So think about you and your teams. Which of the 5 behaviors do you need to work on with your teams? Sometimes you can just take that 5 behavior graphic and just say, hey team, how do you think we're doing on trust? Vulnerability-based trust. How do you think are we doing okay on conflict? Do we have the skills we need to manage it? Do we have commitment? Do we have accountability? And are we getting the results that we're looking for? You can even just have that conversation with that graphic. What skills or resources do you need to build on the behavior that you choose? And then how will you create clear expectations with your teams? And how will you encourage team members to ask for accountability from one another? So that's me sharing with H Leadership. And we have like about 3 minutes for questions in case anybody has questions. Does anybody have questions? Yes. You can either come to the microphone or I can repeat your question.
Whatever's easier.
Well, come on up. Come on up.
If anyone else has a question, I do have a mic, so if you can raise your hand, I'll cue you up next. Perfect.
So my question is, I don't really struggle too much with like the broad scope of leadership. I can get people motivated pretty easy for the most part. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty clear about expectations, backing them up with numerous different documents, handbooks or whatever, emails and teams to just leave a paper trail, basically hold my accountability and be transparent with it. Mm-hmm. So I know that I've left my paper trail of my due diligence of explaining these new policies or expectations. Mm-hmm. And like I said, I don't usually have issues with it. I have a salesperson that she's very, very good. Like, she's insanely good. And I've seen her, since I have taken over, pretty much do nothing but a consistent nosedive, with like one spike here when we had like a conversation to sort of, at first when I went into it, it was sort of one of those conversations of you, this, you're not meeting this kind of thing. And within the first minute or two of the conversation, that succeeded and became more of a motivational conversation. And that's when I saw a spike from her for a little bit of time, and now we're just nosediving again. And for me, I feel like I'm at a loss of finding a way to motivate this person, which is frustrating for me because I've never really fully felt that before. And I don't want this person to leave a team that she has been in for a decade, and I've only been in for a year. That seems weird to me. Like, I'm sort of grasping at straws to motivate her. And like, through all of the steps that you were talking about, I'm very clear about my own pitfalls. I'm, especially in group settings with my team. Like, if I've done something that like I set a rule up for and then I broke it myself, I'm very clear and transparent. Hey, I screwed this up, you know, I let them know, and then it doesn't happen again, kind of thing. I'm just sort of struggling to find a way or direction to motivate this person.
Okay, so that's a really good question. So is our job as leaders
Do
to
you want me
motivate
to stay
people?
up here or sit?
No, you can sit if you
Okay,
like. Is it our job as leaders to motivate people? Somewhat, yes. But everybody intrinsically is motivated by different reasons, right? So when we go back to that report, on the DISC report, it tells you, based on your style, based on your behavior style, your personality style, what motivates you and how it might be different from what how others are motivated. So something's going on there. I don't necessarily have an answer to your question, other than I don't know that it's about motivation as much as it might be about maybe something else that's going on, if that makes sense. So if she's clear on expectations and maybe she's not getting the results that she wants, maybe there's a conflict that might be underlying. There could be so many reasons why that is happening. And so so what I would say, it's not your job necessarily to motivate her. It's your job to understand what's going on and then try to help either address the issues, and you wouldn't know what to address until you really dig in to understand what's driving this behavior that's different from what you've seen in the past.
What if it comes out to be something personal? Where do you, as a leader at that point, how do you continue working with this person if it is something personal that in a PC world that we live in, we're not really allowed to, step into that environment, or you could cross lines?
Sure, that's sensitive, but if it is something personal, there are resources you probably have, like an HR department or something like that. I would encourage, if it is something personal and she doesn't feel comfortable sharing it with you, then I would direct her to an HR team or somebody in the building, somebody on the team, where she could, and then you still have to come to terms around expectations, right? So if this personal situation is going to prevent you from meeting these expectations, we need to help figure this out for you so that you can get back here. So, being supportive and, depending again on the situation, it's a hard question to answer, but I would go down that path for sure. Yes, another question.
Hey Sharon, it's Jonathan West with the Hall Group, Queen Anne Beer Hall, Moss Bay Hall.
I was there last night.
Yeah, it's so great to have you there, and everyone else here who was there last night. In a collaborative environment, what are your advices, tips, tricks to prevent territorialism or tribalism when it comes to decision making, even in the everyday type of operations that go on?
That's a good question as well. So again, depending on who's making up your team and who's typically involved in decisions, most time people want to be heard, right? So if you've heard them out and you still make a decision that might be contrary to what they wanted, they have to buy in and be supportive of the team. When you talk about territorial, meaning this is my area, you don't need to make decisions about my area, trust is missing, I would say. and that there's an inability to have a true conflict conversation. Meaning like, okay, so tell me what is it about your territory that you don't want my help with? Or help me understand why it is that you don't believe that we have enough information to help make decisions. Is that helpful? Okay, so I would kind of go, but something's missing there on those 5 behaviors. I would say territorialism usually is about trust and or just differences in personalities. Sometimes people take a long time, or if they fear a loss of control. There's so many reasons that could be. Yes, one more question.
What is the best way, or I guess what do you suggest when you want to hold your leaders accountable?
Yes, good question. What do you suggest when you want to hold your leaders accountable, right? You ask for accountability. So you use that process. So when you think about, I'll go back to that example of the construction delay, where this person at this hotel had to relocate 3 groups to a different space, and then the construction got delayed again. Now she has to go back to those 3 same groups and relocate them again. I said, well, so what are you doing to ask for accountability for your general manager and for your contractor? You just say that. So my understanding is this. You set the clear expectation, and this is what's happening. Help me understand how we're getting from here to here. You leave an open-ended question. Allow them to provide information, and don't put them on the defensive. Does that help? So you have to, in order to ask for accountability, first there has to be shared, clear expectations. If there isn't, then that's where you start. So my understanding was construction was supposed to be done by May 30th. Now I'm hearing it's going to be done by June 30th. Will there be any further delays? And what will happen if there are further delays? And do you want to call my clients? That's kind of what you want to say, but you don't want to say that. Okay, great. Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much for being a great audience. I really appreciate you, and enjoy the rest of the Northwest Event Show.